Namaste, and welcome to our continuing series on the life divine with our beloved Ranga. We are in the chapter Progress to Knowledge, God, Man, and Nature, page 721, beginning with the line, "But the progress of the mind."
As we have seen, Sriyamda has told us that we have to go step by step. Unless you know your the psychic being, you can't go up. You have to know first of all yourself and the cosmos, then only you can go to the total perfection of the supermind, the Gnostic. So, now we read this one. But the progress of the mind, after the vital and the mind, of the mind, but the progress of the mind, the growth of the soul, even of the mind and soul of the collectivity, depends on the individual, on his sufficient freedom and independence, on his separate power to express and bring into being what is still unexpressed in the mass. Sorry. Still undeveloped from the subconscious, or not yet brought out from within, or brought down from the superconscious. The progress can come from below, but it can also come from above. Okay, so the principle comes down and then there is an awakening. So, still undeveloped from the subconscious, or yet brought, or not yet brought out from within, or brought down from the superconscious. The collectivity is a mass, a field of formation. The individual is the diviner of truth, the form maker, the creator. In the crowd, the individual loses his inner direction and becomes a cell of the mass body, moved by the collective will or idea or the mass impulse. He has to stand apart, affirm his separate reality in the whole, his own mind emerging from the common mentality, his own life distinguishing itself in the common life uniformity. Even as his body has developed something unique and recognizable in the common physicality, he has, even in the end, to retire into himself in order to find himself, and it is only when he has found himself that he can become spiritually one with all. If he tries to achieve that oneness in the mind, in the vital, in the physical, and has not yet a sufficiently strong individuality, he may be overpowered by the mass consciousness and lose his soul fulfillment, his mind fulfillment, his life fulfillment, become only a cell of the mass body. The collective being may then become strong and dominant, but it is likely to lose its plasticity, its evolutionary movement. The great evolutionary periods of humanity have taken place in communities where the individual became active, mentally, vitally, or spiritually alive. For this reason, nature invented the ego, that the individual might disengage himself from the inconscious or subconscious of the mass and become an independent living mind, life power, soul, spirit, coordinating himself with the world around him, but not drowned in it, and separately inexistent and ineffective. For the individual is indeed part of the cosmic being, but he is also something more. He is a soul that has descended from the transcendence. This he cannot manifest at once, because he is too near to the cosmic inconscience, not near enough to the original superconscious. He has to find himself as the mental and vital ego before he can find himself as a soul or spirit. So first of all, he has to develop himself, learn through mistakes, make errors, live life fully, then only you can understand. And then once you are mature, you can go on to finding your soul. So you have to develop yourself, and for that nature has given you the ego. There is a very interesting incident in Vivekananda's life. There were some young boys who knew that Vivekananda is a great yogi. So they go to him and say, "Sir, we want to do yoga." But they are all kids. So Vivekananda tells them, he knows fully that they have to develop themselves first, have experience in life. So he tells them, "Have you ever told a lie? No. Have you ever played football? Go, wrestle, quarrel with others, get experience." I'm exaggerating a little bit, but do that and then you come back. Once you have developed yourself, you have to do all this. And the experience can come only through the rough and tumble of life. So first do that then. That's what Swami is meaning here. Get the ego, live the egoistic life, get yourself developed, and then only you can come to a spiritual life.
But I'd like to ask you about the line, "He has, even in the end, to retire into himself."
Yes, that is because you are part of the collectivity. So if you are part of the collectivity, you will be like, as I said the other day, like a sheep following the leader. Everybody will be following. Okay? So you will be a leaf in the wind. So you have to step back from the collectivity and not get influenced by the collectivity and lead your life.
Does it also mean possibly to live alone?
That's the interesting part. When he says you must separate yourself, he doesn't mean physically. He means psychologically.
Okay.
In fact, your silence must be such that it's not necessarily in your room alone, but it has to be even in the midst of a field of war. You must be able to be calm and quiet. But having said that, if necessary, you have to retire yourself for a short period. He has said that in the synthesis. You are not to reject life, but it doesn't mean to say that you must constantly move with people. No. Suppose I am in an activity where I find it's impossible to practice the spiritual life, I am fully within my rights to withdraw from that activity. Suppose I am doing business and I see that there is a lot of wrong things being done in the business, okay? Hanky-panky going on. So I don't like that and I can't avoid it, even in my business. So I have the right to step back and say, for some time I won't do this. That's what he's saying.
Thank you.
Politics, of course, is the worst possible thing, because politics is based on falsehood. You have to promise things which you know you will never be able to do. So that's why politics is banned in the ashram. That's one of the reasons.
Yes.
Because that's the worst possible field for your yoga. You can't do that. But when Sri Aurobindo was there, he was in that field because his idea was to free India.
Yes.
So he was not a politician, he was a statesman, if you want. And he was working for a very noble cause. He would never tell a lie, or he would never disagree and fight with people. It's very interesting. Even when he didn't agree with somebody, all he would say is, "I don't agree." That's all. Calm, quiet. No quarrel, nothing. I just don't agree. So you are allowed to. You ask the question whether you can withdraw yourself from others and you can be alone. Yes, you can be for a short while, but not become an ascetic.
Right.
Permanently you should not.
Right.
For a short period you can withdraw. There was a boy in the ashram here who used to quote this small piece from the synthesis, that sometimes you may feel the need of withdrawing from the public. So he said, that's what I'm doing. And he gave up his work. But Shanti said, no, you don't give it up permanently, no. For a short period you withdraw when it is useful. So, very clear what he is saying in the para. You have to develop yourself first in the physical world with your ego. Develop yourself, develop your vital, develop your mind. Then you are ready to give up the ego. Use the ego as a ladder. Once you have used it as a ladder, you don't need the ladder anymore. You can throw it away. So, I read the summary. The evolution must ensure the progress of both the individual as well as the collective. Can the collective advance without the individual? No, he needs the individual. But the individual too needs the universe for his progress. There you are. So you can't develop yourself fully by going into seclusion.
Be pure asceticism.
Yes, that's right. So Srimad doesn't approve of that. But for short periods, as I said, possible. The progress of life, mind and soul depends upon the individual. Even the progress of the collective life, mind and soul depends on the individual. But this progress depends on the freedom and independence of the individual. So society must give him freedom. Very often he is not given freedom, and that Srimad does not agree with. Okay, so he must be free to develop according to his unique swabhava. Your progress may be totally different from mine because you are, the swabhava is a very interesting concept. It is the nature of the soul, not your outer nature. The nature of the soul. Each soul has got a different function in the physical world. It's not that, yes, one function is there, you have to realize the divine. But how to realize the divine? In different ways.
But until we realize the psychic being, we cannot tell what is our purpose within. Only Mother could see that.
You can't. But if you develop yourself fully, you will have the consciousness that she has also.
Yes.
Right now it is not possible.
Yes.
That's right. So, on the freedom of the and independence of the individual, he must be free to develop according to his unique swabhava. The individual is the pioneer, the initiator, the creator, the discoverer. What he achieves is later enjoyed by the collectivity. Therefore, the individual must graduate from the unknown, generalized, indistinguishable atom of the collective mass into a clear, well-formed, distinct character as recognizable in a crowd as much as his physical features. He has to develop his vital and his mind as much as he is, and he must stand out just as much as he stands out physically in a crowd. That's what Srimad is saying. And the physical features mark him out as a separate from the mass. It is for this purpose that nature endows him with an ego. If man tries to universalize himself without individual development, he may lose himself in the crowd and become an unrecognizable cell in the collective body. The collectivity may become strong and dominant, as in autocratic states. But it loses its flexibility, its creativity. It becomes a mechanical machine. History is witness to the greatest development in society when the individual is free, dominant, mentally, vitally and spiritually active. This is the function of ego in man. The individual is, without doubt, a part of the collectivity, but he must not drown himself in its mediocrity. He must, by his own effort, rise and raise the social group to his own level of achievement. He must not sink down to the collective level, which is always lesser than his own consciousness, but he must raise society to his own level. That's what Shabda is saying. Of course, it doesn't apply to all men. It applies to those who are in the vanguard, those who are the elite. Okay. Man must find himself vitally and mentally before he can realize himself as a divine soul. This is what he is saying in the para. So we should not look down on those who are at a lower level. They are in that stage where they are developing themselves. It's almost like when a child is not developed, you don't find fault with him. You know that he is at that stage. Exactly the same way we have to behave with others also. I read the next para.
Next para.
Still, to find his egoistic individuality is not to know himself. So, the true spiritual individual is not the mind ego, the life ego, the body ego. Predominantly, this first movement is a work of will, of power, of egoistic self-effectuation, and only secondarily of knowledge. Therefore, a time must come when man has to look below the obscure surface of his egoistic being and attempt to know himself. He must set out to find the real man. Without that, he would be stopping short at nature's primary education and never go on to her deeper and larger teachings. However great his practical knowledge and efficiency, he would be only a little higher than the animals. First, he has to turn his eyes upon his own psychology and distinguish its natural elements. What are they? Ego, mind, and its instruments, life, body. Until he discovers that his whole existence stands in need of an explanation other than the working of the natural elements and of a goal for his activities other than an egoistic self-affirmation and satisfaction. He may seek it in nature and mankind and thus start on his way to the discovery of his unity with the rest of his world. He may seek it in supernature, in God, and thus start on his way to the discovery of his unity with the divine. Practically, he attempts both paths and continually wavering, continually seeks to fix himself in the successive solutions that may be best in accordance with the various partial discoveries he has made on his double line of search and finding. The double line is identifying himself with nature or going to the divine. So, okay, I read the summary. But once he has completed the egoistic phase of his life, he is still an incomplete individual. Okay? Egoistic life is okay, and that's one step. But that doesn't mean to say he can be a spiritual person now. He is still an incomplete individual. He has now to seek for his true individuality beyond and behind the outer surface nature of body, life and mind. He turns his attention inwards. He discovers that is more than his natural instrumentation of body, life and mind. He seeks for the real individuality in external nature and through mankind. He may discover his identity with all in the universe, or he may look for his identity with God. He then discovers that his soul is divine. Thus, on this double line of inquiry, he makes partial discoveries and finds incomplete truths. Not yet the fully developed man. So, I go to the next para. But through it all, what he is in this stage, still insistently seeking to discover, to know, to fulfill, is himself. So that's interesting. Ego is there, but now he has understood, but still he is trying to fulfill, what he is trying to fulfill is himself. And the real himself is the soul, not the body-mind life. That's what it meaning. He is himself. His knowledge of nature, his knowledge of God are only are only helps towards self-knowledge, towards the perfection of his being, towards the attainment of the supreme object of his individual existence. Directed towards nature and the cosmos, he may take upon directed towards nature and the cosmos, it may take his seeking, it may take upon itself the figure of self-knowledge, self-mastery in the mental and vital sense, and mastery of the world in which we find ourselves. Directed towards God, it may take also this figure, but in a higher spiritual sense of world and self. Or it may assume that other, so familiar and decisive to the religious mind, the seeking for an individual salvation, whether in heavens beyond or by separate emergence in the Supreme Self of a Supreme Non-Self, Beatitude or Nirvana. So, you can realize yourself or you can realize the Shunyam, the Nirvana, which is a total blankness. Okay. So, throughout, however, it is the individual who is seeking individual self-knowledge and the aim of his separate existence with all the rest, even altruism, I don't know how you pronounce it.
Altruism.
Okay. Altruism and the love and service of mankind, self-effacement or self-annihilation thrown in with whatever subtle disguises as helps and means towards that one great preoccupation of his realized individuality. This may seem to be only an expanded egoism, and the separative ego would then be the truth of man's being, persistent in him to the end, or till at last he is liberated from it by his self-extinction in the featureless eternity of the infinite. But there is a deeper secret behind which justifies his individuality and his demand. The secret of the spiritual and eternal individual, the Purusha. So Shraddha is saying, first of all you have the ego. Ego goes away, then you have the true individuality. But the true individuality is still something less than the infinite. So he says it may appear to be still just an extended egoism, and there are some who want to get rid of even that individuality. The Buddhists, they want to eliminate completely any trace of individuality. Go back, you came from the infinite, go back to the infinite. Like the river comes and merges into the sea, no more river anywhere. So, it's very interesting what he's saying, but that there is a deeper secret behind which justifies his individuality. So, in other words, he's saying, I don't agree fully with the Buddhists. You don't need to cancel your true individuality. Even that has got a purpose. That's what he's saying. In fact, even the divine has got a personal aspect and an impersonal aspect. The personal aspect is that which has got form and relations are possible. But the impersonal aspect, you can't have relations. You just disappear into the infinite. So that's what is meaning here. So we'll read the summary. Even if he finds himself one with all in the universe or with God, he still seeks to fulfill himself. Okay? He is at this stage still separated from his outer nature, which continues to remain imperfect, limited, untransformed. His knowledge of universe and God are only aids on the journey of self-discovery and self-fulfillment. When this inquiry is directed towards nature, he will acquire self-knowledge and self-mastery, mastery of the world, in a vital and mental sense, not in a spiritual sense. Okay? Like the scientist. He is trying to discover the secrets of nature, and he is making huge progress. But it's not the full thing. That's what he's meaning. If this inquiry is directed towards God, he may get the same result, but in a spiritual sense. Spiritual mastery is far superior to vital and mental mastery. God-directed seeking may lead him to liberation, moksha. He may also turn his efforts towards altruism, philanthropy, where egoism puts on a disguise of selflessness. This may still be an expanded and subtilized ego until it melts into the impersonality of self-extinction in nirvana. But there is yet one more step to be taken for complete self-discovery. So what is that step? He will tell you. There is the personal aspect, there is the impersonal aspect. The true individuality must exist.
Go to the next para.
Yeah. It is because of the spiritual person, PCAP. Okay? So what is that spiritual person? Either the self or the psychic being, not the outer individuality. The outer individuality, Sri Aurobindo uses the word personality with a lower case. But when he uses person with a P uppercase, he means the true being, either the self or the psychic being. It is because of the spiritual person, the divinity in the individual, that perfection or liberation, salvation as it is called in the West, has to be individual and not collective. For whatever perfection of the collectivity is to be sought after can come only by the perfection of the individuals who constitute it. This he has repeated earlier also, we know. It is because the individual is that, with a TCAP, because he is that to find himself is his great necessity. In his complete surrender and self-giving to the Supreme, it is he who finds his perfect self-finding in a perfect self-offering. In the abolition of the mental, vital, physical ego, even of the spiritual ego, it is the formless and limitless individual that has the peace and joy of its escape into its own infinity. In the experience that he is nothing and no one, or everything and everyone, or the one which is beyond all things and absolute, it is the Brahman in the individual that effectuates this stupendous merger or this marvelous joining. Okay, so the stupendous merger is the Buddhist ideal of disappearing into the infinite, and the marvelous joining is finding yourself in God. Okay, so because in the Brahman consciousness there is no joining, you just disappear into the infinite.
So he has a comma after joining and a comma after yoga.
Yeah, that's right. So what is a marvelous joining? Yoga.
Yoga.
Because yoga means, actually it comes from the Sanskrit word yuj, to join. So yoga is a joining. What is joining with whom? The individual soul is joining with the divine. That's yoga. Of its eternal unit of being, with its vast, all-comprehending or supreme, all-transcending unity of eternal existence. So, eternal unit of being, the individual, with its vast, all-comprehending or supreme, all-transcending unity of eternal existence. We are in life divine, we are not in synthesis, and when we are in life divine, it is philosophy. So, he is not using the word God. So, it's very simple. The individual, he is using the word eternal unit of being. Your soul is eternal, but it's a unit. And it has to merge with the vast, all-comprehending or supreme, all-transcending unity of eternal existence. God, whether personal or impersonal, it doesn't matter. Okay. To get beyond the ego is imperative, but one cannot get beyond the self except by finding it supremely, universally. For the self is not the ego, it is one with the all, and the one, and in finding it, it is the all and the one that we discover in ourself. The contradiction, the separation disappears, but the self, the spiritual reality remains, united with the one and the all by that delivering disappearance. So, actually, if we go each sentence, it will take a long time. So, we read the summary. Nowadays, we are reading only the summary. So, the summary of what he read just now. The true individual is a spiritual person, PCAP. And who is this spiritual person? The divine in the individual, either the self or the psychic being. The psychic being is personal, it's got a form, and the self is formless. Okay? This is the great necessity. The true individual is a spiritual person, the divine in the individual. That is the reason why the perfection of the collective cannot come except by the perfection of all the individuals that constitute it. This is the great necessity for the individual to realize his own divinity. This he can do by surrender and self-offering to the Supreme Divine. When he does that, the ego, the sense of separation in the physical, vital and mental disappears. There is then no separate individual anymore. Man realizes he is the all or the one. So, that's interesting. If you go to the Brahman consciousness, you become the one. There is nothing else except that. So, or you realize that you are one with everybody, either in the world or so.
So, in the ashram and in Oroville, can the change become because of one person who realizes?
It can't be one person. That's what he's telling us.
It has to be a collective.
Yeah, it has to be collective. That's what he's telling us very clearly. There has to be many individuals who have to understand each other. When you have strong opinions and you fight with each other, harmony is not possible. It will never come.
We go to the next.
I have to finish this, what I am saying. Okay. So, to go beyond ego is essential. But when we go to the self, there is no more separation. We become universal. We are no more stationed in time and space. We are outside time and space. This self, which is universal, one with all, is the true individual. So he has told us what is the true individual. Now we go to the next para. The higher self-knowledge begins, therefore, as soon as man has got beyond his preoccupation with the relation of nature and God to his superficial being, his most apparent self. And what is that? Your body, mind, life. One step is to know that this life is not all, to get at the conception of his own temporal eternity, to realize, to become concretely aware of that subjective persistence which is called the immortality of the soul. When he knows that there are states beyond the material and lives behind and before him, lives. When he knows that there are states beyond the material and lives behind and before him, at any rate, a pre-existence and a subsequent existence, he is on the way to get rid of his temporal ignorance by enlarging himself beyond the immediate moments of time into the possession of his own eternity. So in those earlier also, I think we have gone through the 7 ignorances and the 7 knowledge. He is now indicating that we don't know nothing about our past lives, and we don't know that we will exist in future also. So once you know that, then that concept, that ignorance is gone. One step is to know that this life is not all. To get at the conception of his own temporal eternity, all the lives, all your lives is the temporal eternity. The timeless eternity is when you go to the self. So the temporal eternity is your psychic being, in time and space, but you live forever. So look at the word, temporal eternity. The self is the timeless eternity. So this is temporal eternity. Eternity in time. To realize, to become concretely aware of that subjective persistence which is called the immortality of the soul. So, immortality of the soul is a temporal eternity. Eternity in time and space, in the world. When he knows that there are states beyond the material and lives behind and before him, at any rate a pre-existence and a subsequent existence, he is on the way to get rid of his temporal ignorance by enlarging himself beyond the immediate moments of time into the possession of his own eternity. Another step forward is to learn that his surface waking state is only a small part of his being, to begin to fathom the abyss of the inconscient and depths of the subconscient and subliminal, and scale the heights of the superconscient. This is what he has to do. So he commences the removal of his psychological self-ignorance. So this is the second. The first, temporal ignorance, this is psychological ignorance. A third step is to find out that there is something in him other than his instrumental mind, life and body, not only an immortal, ever-developing individual soul, that supports his nature, but an eternal, immutable self and spirit, and to learn what are the categories of his spiritual being, until he discovers that all in him is an expression of the spirit and diminishes the link between his lower distinguishes the link between his lower and his higher existence. Distinguishes the link. And the link also diminishes. That's true. Okay. Thus he sets out to remove his constitutional self-ignorance. There is a chapter coming very shortly where all these 7 ignorances he will discuss. Here he is giving us in one sentence each. First is the temporal ignorance, then the psychological ignorance, then he is now talking about constitutional ignorance. Discovering self and spirit, he discovers God. He finds out that there is a self beyond the temporal. He comes to the vision of that self in the cosmic consciousness as the divine reality behind nature and this world of beings. His mind opens to the thought or the sense of the Absolute, of whom self and the individual and the cosmos are so many faces. The cosmic, the egoistic, the original ignorance begin to lose their rigidness of their hold upon him. We will discuss in detail these the 7 ignorances when we come to it. Here he is just giving us a hint. In his attempt to cast his existence into the mold of the self-enlarging self-knowledge, Wait, 1 second. In his attempt to cast his existence into the mold of this enlarging self-knowledge, his whole view and motive of life, thought and action are progressively modified and transformed. His practical ignorance of himself, his nature and his object of existence diminishes. He has set his step on the path which leads out of the falsehood and suffering of a limited and partial into the perfect possession and enjoyment of a true and complete existence. So, he has not told us all the ignorances, but we'll discuss that in great detail. Okay, because there's a whole chapter on it. The 7 ignorances and sevenfold knowledge. Okay.
Summary.
I'm reading the summary. The higher self-knowledge begins for man as soon as he goes beyond his outer nature of body, life and mind. He realizes that he is not body, mind, life. His consciousness rises out of the body, mind, life. He realizes the self-knowledge is there. He then realizes his many ignorances and is able to abolish them. First is to realize that his present life is not the only one. His soul is eternal and has lived in other bodies and will also continue to live in future bodies. Thus he loses his temporal ignorance. The idea that I am in time and space only one life, that is the temporal ignorance. He gets rid of it. Next, he realizes that he is not only the apparent outer being of body, life, mind. He has a subconscient, an inconscient, an intraconscient, a superconscient. He is truly all that exists. He goes beyond his psychological ignorance. So he is a universe. So that his psychological ignorance is removed. Third, the third ignorance is removed when he realizes that he is not merely body, life, mind and the individual soul, but an eternal, immutable self, Atman, Brahman, with all its aspects of lower and higher, Nirguna, Saguna, individual, cosmic, transcendental. This constitutional ignorance now stands abolished. He comes to the knowledge of the Absolute, which is beyond self, individual and cosmos, and is their origin. This is the original ignorance that is now eliminated. When he knows all this, he becomes capable of applying these truths in his daily practical life, which is usually full of error, ignorance, limitation, perversion. This is the removal of the practical ignorance. Because he does not know his soul, because he does not know that he is the universe, because he does not know that he is coming from God, he makes mistakes here. That's the practical ignorance. That will be the one that will go last. So, in the course, yeah. So he has told us four ignorances. In the course of this progress, he discovers step by step the unity of the 3 categories with which he started. Remember what those 3 categories are? Okay. So we'll see what he's saying. For first, he finds that in his manifest being, he is one with cosmos and nature, mind, life, body, and the soul in the succession of time, the conscient, subconscient, and superconscient. These are the 3. The conscient, the subconscient, and superconscient. These in their various relations, and the result of their relations are cosmos, and our nature. But he finds too that in all which stands behind them, or on which they are based, he is one with God. For the Absolute, the Spirit, the Self, spaceless and timeless, the Self manifest in the cosmos and Lord of nature, All this is what we mean by God. And in all this, his own being goes back to God and derives from it. He is the Absolute, the Self, the Spirit, self-projected in a multiplicity of itself into cosmos and veiled in nature. In both of these realizations, he finds his unity with all other souls and beings. Relatively in nature, since he is one with them in mind, vitality, matter, soul, every cosmic principle and result, however various in energy and active energy, disposition of principle and disposition of result, but absolutely in God, because the one Absolute, the one Self, the one Spirit is ever the Self of all and the origin, possessor and enjoyer of their multitudinous diversities. The unity of God and nature cannot fail to manifest itself to him, for he finds in the end that it is the Absolute who is all these relativities. He sees that it is the Spirit of whom every other principle is a manifestation. He discovers that it is the Self who has become all these becomings. He feels that it is the Shakti, or the power of being and consciousness of the Lord of all beings, which is nature and is acting in the cosmos. Thus, in the progress of our self-knowledge, we arrive at that by the discovery of which all is known as one with ourself, and by the possession of which all is possessed and enjoyed in our own self-existence. This is what in the Upanishads it says, that the one in the
many,
One in the only.
the one in the many, the
many in
many in
the
the
one.
one, and the one becoming the many. These are the three. It is everything is in God, God is in everything, and God himself has become everything. Yeah. In this spiritual journey of self-discovery, he comes to know that the three categories, the individual, the cosmic and the transcendental, are really all only one. First, he discovers that his nature of body, life and mind is one with nature. It is nature which has created his body, mind, life. His body is formed of universal matter. His vital is a small formation of universal prana. His mind is a limited individual construction of the universal mental substance. He is therefore intimately connected with the universe. The individual too, in his eternal journey, is at first a subconscious part of nature, the atom in matter. With evolution, the individual has a mental nature and is therefore a conscious part of nature. Nearing the end of his journey, he becomes a superconscious being. Therefore, he has in him a subconscious, an inconscient, an intraconscient and a superconscious. Next, he sees that behind all phenomena of nature, there is a divine reality that supports all these outer forms and activities. He sees that he is a very absolute, manifested in infinite multiplicity in the cosmos. Thus, he is relatively one with nature in the lower levels of existence, but he is also one with God absolutely. So, part of him is there in God and part of him is here in the physical world. He is everything. That's what I'm saying. So, we stop here today.
Yes, thank you, Ranga.
And we go equally by virtue of his end.
Namaste, all. We'll see you all again on Saturday, continuing in our series Progress to Knowledge, God, Man, and Nature.